Welcome back to The Tenacious Cyclist, the podcast that proves pain, disability, and adversity don't define your limits. I'm Matt, your host, and today I'll be reading from the memoir of David Bainbridge, Living on My Terms, whose life epitomizes relentless determination. Let's begin. This isn't a story about miracles. It's not about some magic pill, some overnight transformation, or some feel-good nonsense that tells you life gets easier if you just stay positive. This is about war, a war against pain, against the voice in my head telling me I can't. Pain was my first memory, not the warmth of a mother's embrace or carefree laughter, just pain. From 3 years old, pain has been my constant companion. Every day since then, I've woken up, lived, and gone to sleep with pain. There is no cure, no fix, no magic pill. And one day, I will die in pain. For over 5 decades, I've endured severe, relentless pain from Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, complex regional pain syndrome, and other conditions most people can't imagine. 20 years in a wheelchair tested me further, yet it only strengthened my determination to live life on my terms. My journey with medication started early. At just 7 years old, doctors prescribed me codeine, beginning a decades-long dependency on opiates simply to function. No one warned me then about the prison I was stepping into. By age 10, dislocations had become part of my daily reality. By now, my body has dislocated over 343,000 times and subluxated over 2.92 million times. Every step I take, every movement, is a gamble. Will my shoulder stay in its socket? Will my knee collapse? Will my hip grind bone on bone today? By 2007, my pain had escalated into something beyond suffering. Complex regional pain syndrome, CRPS, the most painful condition known to medicine, had taken hold. Worse than amputation, worse than cancer pain, my body felt perpetually on fire. Even a gentle breeze could trigger convulsions of agony. Doctors had one answer: more drugs. Fentanyl, morphine, gabapentin, methadone, OxyContin, buprenorphine, a dose that would be fatal for most. And yet, even at these extreme doses, at best, my pain was only 40% controlled. Yet, I was still in agony. Worse, the drugs were killing me. Long QT syndrome wrecked my heart. An opiate-induced central sleep apnea caused my breathing to stop 97 times an hour, dropping my blood oxygen levels to 69%, turning every night into a game of Russian roulette with a 60% chance I wouldn't wake up. In 2019, the breaking point arrived: severe opiate toxicity. The same medications meant to help me were killing me. I faced 2 choices: stay on the drugs and die a slow, pathetic death, or face withdrawal head-on and fight like hell. I chose war. My pain consultant gave me full autonomy to do it my way, but that also meant I was on my own. I had zero support from my GP or other medical agencies, just a monthly check-in call from the pain management clinic, as if a few words over the phone could do anything against the torment I was enduring. But I had made my choice. I wasn't turning back. So on November 8th, 2019, I cut off gabapentin cold. 2,800 milligrams a day, gone in an instant. Then the real war began. Opiate detoxification. The first sign of hell was the sweating. A cold, clammy dampness soaked through my sheets. My heart pounded violently, the rhythm erratic, like it was trying to punch its way out of my chest. My body itched, but not on my skin. Deeper, like a fire spreading underneath it. The cramps hit next. Deep, twisting spasms in my muscles, seizing up my legs, locking my arms into painful positions. My nerves were short-circuiting, firing pain signals I couldn't control. And then, the pain came crashing down. The pain I had known all my life, but raw, unfiltered, brutal, relentless. For decades, opiates had dulled it, buried it under layers of sedation. But now, my nervous system had been ripped open, left exposed, and forced to feel every inch of its own destruction, Every joint screamed, every nerve burned, every inch of my body felt like it was dismantling itself from the inside out. The mind breaks first. Sleep vanished. I would close my eyes, but my body refused to let me drift away. Every time I started to slip into unconsciousness, a violent jolt would snap me back. My heart would race, panic would flood my chest, and I'd be gasping for air, desperate for rest that never came. I was trapped in a cycle of pure, unrelenting torture. The nausea was overwhelming. I couldn't eat. I couldn't drink without retching. My body rejected everything. I was starving, but my stomach was in full revolt. And then came the shakes. My hands twitched uncontrollably. My legs convulsed. I couldn't hold a cup, couldn't grip a fork, couldn't control my own limbs. I could barely recognize myself. Reality slips away. Somewhere around day 10, I stopped knowing what was real. I started seeing things. Shadows moved where there were none. Insects crawled on my skin. I could feel them. But they weren't there. Voices whispered in the corners of my mind, cruel, taunting, laughing at my suffering. I spoke to people who weren't there. I argued with my own reflection. And then I started to feel disconnected from my body, like I wasn't real. Like I was floating above myself, watching this wreckage of a man writhe in pain, trapped in his own personal hell. I wanted to scream, but my voice was gone. The relapse temptation. People think withdrawal is a week-long process. They think you suffer for a few days, maybe a couple of weeks, and then it's over. That's a lie. I was 130 days in, and my body was still at war with itself. The pain hadn't eased. The exhaustion was still crushing. The nights were still endless, empty, and suffocating. My brain begged me to take just one pill, just a small dose. You don't have to suffer like this. You'll never make it through this. What's the point of this? Just take it. Just take it. Just take it. The cravings weren't just psychological. My body was screaming for relief. I knew one thing for certain. If I took even one, I was dead. Because I would never stop at one. And so, I kept suffering. For 256 days, I had no pain control. My body flared with unrelenting agony, pushing me beyond anything I thought I could survive. I was confined to bed for weeks, barely functional, my mental health hanging by a thread. The pain was beyond out of control. It was all-consuming. The kind that makes you question whether you can make it to the next hour, let alone the next day. 256 days. That's how long it took for the worst of it to fade. My body was wrecked, my muscles wasted, my joints destroyed, but I had survived. The pain hadn't gone away, it never would. But the fog had lifted. The drugs hadn't saved me. They had stolen my life. The pain was still there. It always would be. But without the meds, I was sharper. I could think again. I could feel it again. My body wasn't any stronger, but my mind was. I won't sugarcoat it. Withdrawal is hell. It will strip you down to the raw, ugly core of your existence. It will test you in ways you never thought possible. But if you make it through, if you claw your way back, you will be you again. And that is worth every second of suffering. I am not fearless. I still battle my demons every day. But I know one thing for sure. I am stronger than the drugs that tried to break me. And when the dust settled, something incredible happened. For the first time in decades, I felt alive. And now I had to rebuild myself. Not with medication, not with doctors, but with advanced pain management skills. Hard-earned, relentless, uncompromising skills. These are skills, not treatments. They aren't easy. They take practice. They take time and patience, but they work. Pain management isn't about getting rid of pain. It's about learning to function despite it. And that is something that anyone can learn, for free. The power of advanced pain management. I've spent most of my life facing battles that many never see. Pain so relentless it used to dictate every choice I made. Doctors, medications, and traditional therapies have been part of my journey. But I learned early on that there's no miracle cure for conditions like Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome or complex regional pain syndrome. I couldn't wait for someone else to fix me. Instead, I had to develop my own strategies and push forward, determined to keep living life on my own terms. One of the most powerful lessons I've learned is that there's no single solution to chronic pain. It requires tenacity, self-awareness, and an unshakable mindset that says, I know this won't be easy, but I'm doing it anyway. In the early days, I tried to numb or ignore my pain, anything to pretend it wasn't there. But that approach only caused more setbacks. Gradually, I realized that true progress starts with self-awareness. I began identifying every trigger that could spark a flare-up, from the smallest physical movement to emotional stressors. Instead of shutting out my body's signals, I leaned into them. I learned to feel the pain, not to wallow in it, but to understand its patterns and manage it more effectively. How I manage constant severe pain without medication. I had to completely rewire my relationship with pain. That meant mindset rewiring. Pain doesn't mean I'm broken. It's my training ground. Movement as medicine. Stopping hurts more than moving. That non-weight-bearing exercise reduces my pain over time, even when it feels unbearable at the start. Breathing and nervous system control. Pain will try to own me. Using my breathing to calm my nervous system, break the pain-anxiety cycle, and push through when my body is screaming at me to stop. Micro-pacing. Learning to break movement, tasks, and effort into tiny, manageable increments, preventing flare-ups and allowing me to do more over time. Mental endurance training. I treat pain like an ultra-endurance event. I pace. I adapt. I overcome. Fueling for war. With gastroparesis and malabsorption, my body fights me on everything I eat. But getting my nutrition and hydration right is the difference between surviving and thriving. Music as a weapon. Sound isn't just background noise, it's fuel. When my body wants to quit, I turn up the volume and let the music drive me forward. Eliminate inflammation. Achieve zero inflammation with a daily boost of 60 grams. Turmeric and 50 grams. Ginger cold pressed daily. But let me be clear, I am not cured. My pain is still severe, constant, and life-altering. The difference? I'm no longer at its mercy. Instead of trying to escape it, I train for it. Like an endurance athlete preparing for the toughest race of their life. What is micro-pacing? A key turning point in my journey was discovering and refining micro-pacing. Unlike traditional pacing, which involves broad adjustments to activities, micro-pacing is highly individualized and precise. You break down tasks into smaller increments, often timing them to the minute. By operating at about 80% of your perceived capacity, you allow room to prevent that dreaded boom and bust cycle, feeling good one day, overdoing it, then crashing for days afterward. Identifying triggers. Every single activity can have repercussions. I methodically track what sets off pain or fatigue, from carrying groceries to taking long bike rides. Timing activities. I note down how many minutes I can sustain a particular action before my symptoms start to flare. Accounting for delayed symptoms. Some of my toughest flare-ups hit me days later, so I factor in this lag when planning my week. Adhering to the 80% rule. By deliberately working below my maximum capacity, I maintain consistency and avoid major flare-ups. This nuance makes micro-pacing different from the more generic pacing advice you might hear. It's all about the details, and it acknowledges that my body is the ultimate authority. Heart rate monitors and other data can guide me, but my own sensations and experiences are often more reliable. How micro-pacing changed my life. Before micro-pacing, I lived in constant fear of flare-ups, especially as someone with EDS. After adopting this method in 2010, I haven't had a full-blown flare-up since. That doesn't mean I don't experience pain. It means I've learned how to navigate it. Micro-pacing also helps me manage complex issues like chronic fatigue and gastroparesis. By planning my meals and activity windows carefully, I can make sure I'm fueling my body without exacerbating my digestive troubles. The framework allows me to push boundaries while staying mindful of the repercussions. It's not about playing it safe. It's about taking informed risks and proactively managing the fallout. Music, the soundtrack to pain management. Music isn't just entertainment. It's a tool, a weapon, a force that can override suffering and push me forward when nothing else will. High energy beats for movement. When I cycle, train, or push through the worst pain, I use fast, relentless music that demands I keep moving. It drowns out doubt. It silences hesitation. Deep bass and rhythm for pacing. Pain is like an opponent. If I can't control it, it controls me. I use beats to set my rhythm, to match my breathing, to break the cycle of tension. Instrumentals for focus. When my mind is spiraling, when I feel like I'm drowning in the pain, I use instrumental music to lock in, to clear the noise in my head and bring me back to the moment. Hard-hitting lyrics for mental fire. I don't need soft melodies. I need words that hit like war drums, lyrics that remind me who I am, what I've overcome, and what I refuse to let beat me. Music is pain management. Music is energy. Music is resistance to suffering. Music keeps me moving forward. Facing the mental challenge. The mental toll of chronic pain can be as overwhelming as the physical symptoms. Constantly calculating the cost of an activity is exhausting, and watching others live without those restrictions can feel isolating. But one of the biggest differences in my mindset, and what I believe sets me apart, is that I don't operate under the illusion that things will just work out. I know they won't, and I do them anyway. That perspective keeps me pushing forward. My advice to anyone in a similar situation is to listen to your body rather than fight it. Redefine success based on your reality. Sometimes success is making it through the day without triggering a major pain episode. Sometimes it's riding your bike a bit farther than last week. Building a supportive community and focusing on daily acts of resilience can transform what once felt like survival into a life that feels genuinely lived. From wheelchair to ultra cycling. For me, endurance and ultra-endurance have been a natural evolution. Without realizing it, I've been training for them my whole life, just in a different way. Managing constant, severe chronic pain at an advanced level has so much in common with ultra-endurance sports. Both demand mental resilience, strategic energy management, and a deep understanding of the body's limits. I spent 20 years in a wheelchair, smashed my right shoulder climbing Snowdon for charity, and could no longer self-propel. So, in true wildcard fashion, I came up with what seemed like a completely insane fundraising idea. Racing a tall ship 197 miles from Great Yarmouth to London in 2023 with a mixed ability team of disabled and non-disabled. Everyone thought I was crazy. To prove it was possible, I self-adapted a bike, rebuilt and modified it, and learned to ride. Then rode 54-mile London to Brighton in June 2023. And somewhere along the way, I fell in love with cycling. And I just kept going. I didn't get into cycling to prove a point. I got into cycling because something inside me refused to sit still. I needed to move. I needed to push. I needed to take back control over my body, my mind, and my future. So I found a way. I adapted. I built the strength I didn't know I had. I climbed back onto two wheels and rode forward. 1 mile, then 10, then 50, then hundreds. Each pedal stroke was a middle finger to every doubt I had about myself, to every person who ever told me what I couldn't do. Cycling, for me, isn't just a sport. It's a rebellion. It's a defiant act against the limitations imposed by my body and the doubts cast by others. Every pedal stroke is a victory, a declaration that I am more than my diagnoses. I am strength. I am tenacity. I am a cyclist. Wheels of resilience. People throw the word resilience around like it's just about being tough, about standing your ground, pushing through pain, and refusing to quit. But resilience is more than that. It's about adaptation. It's about reinvention. It's about refusing to accept the limits the world tries to put on you. This isn't about denying the pain. It's about acknowledging it, respecting it, and then choosing to transcend it. It's about finding the sliver of space where resilience takes root, where grit blossoms amidst the discomfort. For most of my life, people told me what I couldn't do. That Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, complex regional pain syndrome, and mobility challenges would put me in a box. A life dictated by limitations, by doctors' warnings, by the words, "you can't." That adventure, endurance, and physical achievement were off the table. That I had no business chasing goals meant for the able-bodied. But I never accepted that. Because the moment you let someone else define your limits, you've already lost. The results? I do the impossible. Climbed Snowdon in a wheelchair, 2022. Tore my rotator cuff in the first mile, but I kept pushing for 7 more hours until reaching the summit. Ride London, 102 miles. While still recovering, after 3 weeks in Addenbrooke's hospital with malnutrition and severe GI issues, gastroparesis, dysphagia, chronic intestinal pseudo-obstruction. I lost muscle tone and not having been on a bike for 8 weeks. Fueling is challenging with malabsorption issues at the best of times. With no sleep, I smashed my personal record, finished in 6 hours 23 minutes with just one 5-minute break for toilet and water. Then came an extended London to Brighton ride in June 2024, 92 miles in 6 hours, and a 65-mile off-road version in September, despite tearing my rotator cuff in 2 places just 10 days before and a third time by the end of the ride. Since January 2023, I've ridden over 4,100 miles. Crushed endurance rides, 197 miles Race the Ship, 102-mile Ride London, 105-mile Audax, 92-mile London to Brighton and back, 62-mile Sportive, 117-mile Cardiff Barry Gloucester. In 2025, I'm training for 2 ultra-endurance rides. Chase the Sun, 208 miles, 3,000 metres elevation, between sunrise and sunset on the longest day. Dunwich Dynamo, 112 miles, an overnight ride from London to the Suffolk coast on 12th July. I don't ride a drop bar racing bike, I don't ride in groups, I don't stop for coffee and cake, and my rides are completely unsupported. It's just me, my bike, my music, and the road ahead.